Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us, taking the time out of your schedule to be here. Just wanted to say at the beginning, Kingdom Advisors is a leader in the Christian financial services industry. And our focus is to help advisors align biblical wisdom with the advice and counsel that they provide to their clients. And I also want to say that great things are happening in Canada. You know, we had 170 attend the conference this year, the annual conference that took place in February. There were 26 financial professionals from around the world at the event and 170 from Canada. If you are one of those, I would definitely encourage you to take advantage of the CE that was provided, because for the first time ever, we had 19 hours of continuing education pre-approved through FP Canada. But you obviously couldn't get all those hours live, so you have to go in if you have been registered, or even if you want to take advantage of that, you can purchase that again, even if you weren't registered, and take advantage of that offer, because there's lots of great content there. As well, we have our monthly study groups, and this month we are actually focusing on widows. How would you deal, with a widow as a client, and working through that. By the way, we're going to emphasize that topic in July as part of this webcast as well. So we are delighted really to serve you, to provide community, that qualifying education credit, and the integration of faith into your finances is the key. And that's exactly the reason we do these webinars, to provide that for you, to show and demonstrate the type of value that Kingdom Advisors provides you with. And my guest today has really been part of the work of Kingdom Advisors before I was, in actual fact, and she has stood by this ministry financially and promoted it at every possibility. And Ruby, it's really such a pleasure to have you with us today. And she is passionate about providing businesses and owners with excellent financial advice at critical stages of the business cycle. She has an excellent reputation based on integrity, results, independent thinking, and mutual respect. She is a multi-accredited financial professional with broad experiences, and this is broad: public accounting, business operations, controller, entrepreneur, owner, practice management, financial planning, portfolio management, business development, and investment banking. She's done a lot, and you'd never say it because she still looks pretty young. So with a passion for ongoing learning and development, Ruby has obtained numerous respected industry credentials and designations over many years, and she has over 30 years of experience as a financial professional. Welcome to the show today.
Thanks, Lorne. And it's been more of a blessing for me, I'm sure, than it has been for the organization. So thank you, Kingdom Advisors.
Yeah, it's great. And we want you to share a little bit of your story. And you are actually with Stillwater now. And we're going to talk a little bit about the transition that brought you there. But before we get into that, I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about your success over the years, because you've had lots of success as a financial advisor in Canada, and well recognized in this industry, that's for sure. And by the way, I do want to make mention that Ruby is also the winner of the Advisors with Purpose Award. The last time we handed it out, I believe, before COVID. So congratulations on that, Ruby. And that's an award basically that goes to someone who has demonstrated that they are incorporating intentionally faith into their advice. But so that's just a little interjection there. But tell us a little bit about your success, Ruby.
Well, Lorne, first thing I want to say is that God has a sense of humor. And I remember one of the very last top 25 advisors conferences, reward conferences that Manulife had in Ireland. And if I doubted what the cause of my success was, he has a sense of humor, because he showed me this on right after the conference ended in Ireland. I went to, and I do believe this was in Sligo, which is where my father's ancestors before 1890, 1790, when they came to Canada. They were from this little town, and on this beautiful tribute to the famous St. Patrick in Ireland was engraved in his words, "Let your conclusion be that my success was a gift of God." And I felt that it was directly speaking to me. Actually, at this conference, I was there with one of my clients. I called her auntie. She wasn't technically an aunt, but she was elderly. And then a childhood friend. And I just thought it was so interesting that this childhood friend and I, born a couple of weeks apart, grew up in the same church. And I said to them, I think God is speaking to me with this at this conference. So it is truly what I believe. There's no reason for my success other than God deemed it his will, because I'm the 10th of 13 kids. Neither of my parents have even high school education. Mom was an immigrant from war-torn Holland, and dad was a farmer turned into a prison guard. And then here I came along. And the one thing I want to say to everybody is I felt so different, as I actually grew up in a way as a minority in a town. I grew up in a town that was 90% Francophone, and I really stood out like a sore thumb because I was Anglophone, number one. Number two, being half Dutch, I didn't look at all like I'm tall. I was very blonde and fair as a child, and really stood out. And when I'm in financial planning, we really stand out. And this slide, to me, where it was something that it was hard for me to be different, or I felt like there was something weird about me, it actually being different is a success factor. So when you ask me what's one of my successes, is because I'm different in the industry. And never, ever, my word of encouragement to people listening, never be ashamed of your faith or your strong conviction in biblical financial principles, because regardless of if you get mocked by them, and I have been by some people you'd be shocked who mocked my values, but it does make us who we are, and it was what I believe the reason for my success.
Yeah, it's interesting because we are a peculiar people. The Bible tells us that. And when I see that slide, we're not necessarily the black sheep, but we are different and kind of going against the current, going against the stream, where we're called to be different. And so I appreciate you saying that, because the purpose of Kingdom Advisors is so that even though you're different, you don't have to be alone. And
right.
I think Kingdom Advisors has really formed that community and is really forming that community in Canada, where you can exercise using biblical wisdom, but not necessarily have to feel like you're all alone in this industry.
Absolutely. And the other thing about when we start a business as a financial advisor, and if there's any new advisors on the call, this is actually a picture that I had when I first went into the industry. And really, my passion was not to go into financial planning to make a whole bunch of money. My passion was not just, I love this quote by Marie Forleo, never start a business just to make money. Start a business to make a difference. And when I went into financial planning, one of my very long-term time friends, I had known this woman since I was probably about 10 years old, and she was a partner at KPMG. And I was having lunch with her, sort of, what am I going to do next with my life? And she said, go into financial planning. And I was really kind of insulted in a way. And she said, be the change you want to be in the world. And you don't realize it, but you're competent in what you do, even though, like she says, how many people would take the CFP designation for fun? How many people, like, I don't know people like you, Ruby, you're confident in that, how to be a good planner because you've done it yourself, you've lived it, and you're compassionate, you have a big heart to help people. And so I think that's an important key to also to what makes us successful. And Kingdom Advisors, they have a great piece, and if you don't have it, I strongly recommend you get it, about why should people use a CKA. And it is because we're competent to begin with, not only in, like in my case, I obviously had other education, but the CKA designation and the biblical principle teaching I've learned since a young age is so critical in my competency in what I do. And then sure, I have confidence in a worldly way because I've got a successful track record. I knew what I was doing, but also I'm confident that who I am in Christ is that I may be different, but God made me who I am, and he gave me my gifts and abilities. And that I love the verse, Isaiah 49:2, is that, you know, he made me like a sharpened sword, like a sharp arrow in his quiver, and he keeps me safe until just the time that he wants to use me. And so that gives me so much confidence. And as a woman in the industry, and many times in my life, most times in my life, even now, I'm usually outnumbered by other male professionals, and never to shy away from my confidence in being a woman professional, because Philippians 4:3, Paul said these women labored side by side, and their names are in the book of life alongside with me. And same with 1 Corinthians 12:18, is that God has given us gifts, knowledge, wisdom, revelation, and understanding, that those are gifts from him to help us have confidence that we can actually execute. Because lots of people may know the right thing to do, but we have to execute our financial plans, our wisdom, our guidance with our clients. And just, you know, we all know that love is the most important attribute of a Christian. You will know that we are believers by our love, and we have to be humble, truthful, protective of our clients. We have to be trustworthy. We have to persevere, and we really do have to execute. So what's really important to me is for our collective reputation as followers of Jesus Christ in the truth, the way, and the life, is that we really have to, each one of us, be the change we want to see in this industry. Because these biblical principles that we hang our hat on, they're principles. And as Warren Buffett says, if principles become dated, they're not principles. And we know that these principles have stood the test of time. And in addition, the whole stewardship of all of these things that God has given us is a blessing. And we have to really use it, not only to increase our own standard of living, and certainly my standard of living was increased over my 25-year career in financial planning and 32-year career in finance, but it's also, this is so important, to increase our standard of giving, because that is how we will be held accountable. So never forget really that stewardship position we're all in.
Yeah, that's powerful, Ruby. I appreciate what you shared about confidence. And, you know, you're competent as an advisor, and you're confident in that area, but also confident in sharing biblical wisdom. Because, you know, I think a lot of advisors out there have a similar confidence based on their experience in the industry, but bringing in the biblical piece is a lot more challenging. And so I think and I really appreciate that you mentioned the Certified Kingdom Advisor designation, because that does help you become a whole lot more confident in delivering that wisdom. And the bottom line is that wisdom works. It doesn't matter if it's with a Christian or non-Christian client. The biblical wisdom works, but it's the ability for us to have a confidence to deliver that in a winsome way. So really appreciate you sharing that. So Ruby, I also know enough about you to know that your life has been disrupted a little bit along the way. And I think that's probably part of all of our journeys in life. Some disruptions come along the way. So I'd like for you to speak a little bit about some of the things that you've experienced in life, and then take us up to probably the latest disruption was really in 2019.
Yeah, Lorne, and it's so true what you said, that we are all products of some sort of disruption. And I've had a number of disruptions, and I'm sharing them because I want to be an encouragement and tell you, my own story. And you can take any, like as my father used to say, eat the meat and throw out the bones. Anything you find useful, that's my prayer. But, as a young child, I don't even think I was 10 yet. And I was already doing little entrepreneurial and businesses on the side. And I was an exceptionally curious child, much to the chagrin of, my sisters, who I would read their diaries, or even my mother. And I read my mother's diary when she was a teenager, and learned all about my parents' relationship at a very young age. And really had a passion for business and making money, not in a, so I can consume more point of view, but just because I found it fascinating. And that's not always viewed, favorably in some Christian denominations. It's much more so now. But when I was young, it was like there was something wrong with me, or something different about me. And again, as I said, Isaiah 42, God made me, and God made me for a specific reason, like a sword or an arrow would be made for somebody in biblical times, and for him to use me in his timing. And so along my journey, I naturally was good at math, very encouraged to go into business and administration when I was a student. And when I was in business, loved finance and was doing my Canadian securities course, like while I was going to university at Wilfrid Laurier. And then my prof disrupted me, and he took me for lunch. It was my third year, after my third work term, actually my final work term in a co-op program. And he said, Ruby, I want to talk to you about, I really think you should go into the CA profession. And I said, Professor Marks, it's my worst subject in university. And he said, well, it's not that bad, number one. Number two, because he was my accounting prof. And he said, I know, but it's not bookkeeping, and it's not what you're seeing in these classes. You need this knowledge. But he said to me this word that never left me: chartered accountants add integrity to information. And this was 1987. And he said, and there's so much information out there, and so little of it has integrity. Little did he know about the World Wide Web and social media, because nobody knew about it then, right? And he said, I said, but I really love finance and business. And he says, yes, but chartered accountants, you can snoop around in businesses, a lot of different ones, a lot of different industries, and you'll never regret it. It'll be like an MBA in finance, he said. So very disrupted. I had to majorly change my academic studies sort of at the last minute, and I'm sure many people have gone through that too. And then when I was in public accounting, here I was like, wow, I really like this, and I feel like I remember being on an audit of a financial institution who was like whiting out numbers on a computer sheet and sticking them into typewriters and typing them out. And, this was in a huge financial crash. 2 banks in Canada went under, some trust companies were forced to consolidate, real estate in Toronto and across Canada had fallen 30%, 89 savings and loans in the United States went under. And I was like at the top of my game, in charge of this audit, and going, no, that's not acceptable. We won't give you a clean audit report, Mr. Trust Company. And being disrupted, this global recession hit in 1991. And most of the downtown Bay Street accounting firms were, downsizing. And, in those days, the women were the first to go, kind of thing. And I got downsized, and I had gone to McGill for a bit, came home to Sudbury, tried to figure out what am I going to do with my life now, because I'm disrupted. And interestingly enough, I fell in love with my hometown again, which is really weird, because I never ever thought I would ever be back in Sudbury as long as I lived. It was, I couldn't wait to leave when I was young. My dad's family were all in the Oakville, Southern Ontario area. my mother's family, my siblings were kind of spread out. We had good, cousins from Vancouver all the way to overseas. And I really never, ever imagined myself being in Northern Ontario, but got involved in a startup here that just made me part of the community, got involved in businesses. I did some financial and strategic restructurings, and then was in a partnership and in an engine manufacturing company. And anybody have a partnership that didn't end up the way you wanted it to? Yeah, me too. So it's disrupted again, went into the financial planning profession. I already told you a little bit about that, how my girlfriend had chartered a partner at KPMG challenged me to go into it. And, I bought a case and I kind of went in kicking and screaming, but really clearly, I was at a great church at the time, and I was like very clearly, I got to do this God's way, and that's it, that's all. And so I bought a case of Larry Burkett, who was one of the founders of Kingdom Advisors, many years later. But I bought a case of his books, Using Your Money Wisely, Biblical Principles Under Scrutiny. And in September 1995, took the dive and gave a book to anyone who would take it, believer or not believer. And then disrupted again, going from a financial advisor, and now I'm wearing a mergers and acquisitions investment banker hat. And that happened when I prayed at the 2019 Disrupted Conference, Lord, disrupt me for your will. And the subline of the conference was powerful but positive disruption, and certainly it was for me.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Many times we can look at disruption as exactly that, and we're not going back to the norm. But God uses disruption, I think, in our lives. Sometimes it's an outside circumstance. Sometimes it's just this inner turmoil. But I think we can have confidence that the Lord is in the disruption many times to move us closer to where He wants us to be. And sometimes that can be difficult to understand and figure out. So there is a question that has come in that I wanted to pose to you. What was one of the most challenging aspects you have had to overcome in your financial advising career? So whether that was a disruptive time, I don't know. But if you want to answer that now or later, that's perfectly fine.
Again, I think it was when I moved firms the first time. And actually, it's really the only time I really moved. The other times there have been acquisitions. But it's a huge, it was a very challenging time for me to move firms. It was right sort of near the peak of the tech bubble. I was, being a chartered accountant, I think and a Christian, I think naturally I tended to be more of a value investor. I'm not a gambler by any stretch of the imagination. Anyone that knows me really well knows I started a petition against a casino. And that was definitely a very challenging time. And then looking back on it again, it was so hard, but in the end, so powerful. And that, I love this image of from Narnia, with the lion beside the woman from Narnia. And really, I always, in all of these disruptions in my life, knew that Jesus was right there beside me. And at the end of the day, either my world would end or it wasn't. And either way, it would be okay, because I'm not alone. I can depend on Christ, that He has my best interest at heart, and He will never leave me. And how many times have we all said, I don't know how people without faith get through life? And it's so much different having a strong faith in Jesus Christ as your Savior when you go through a disruption.
So on the disruption thing, I want to take you back, and I want you to explain a little bit about your meeting or seeing the Stillwater booth at the conference in Florida, at the Disruption Conference. You had a quick conversation, but you didn't necessarily feel that conversation was for you. It might have been for your clients, but yeah. So just tell us a little bit about that conversation, if you would.
Like I said, Lorne, God has a sense of humor. And I actually sat down once and did the math on, because I loved math. What's the probability of all of these things happening in my life when they did? And it's just like 0, 16, 16 zeros, 4, 5, 3. And it's just fascinating to me that at that 2019 conference, I had one of my own succession plan options with me. She accepted the Lord at that conference, and I met Doug, the CEO of Stillwater, at that same conference, and it was called Disrupted. And yeah, so I met Doug, and it was great. I was so happy to meet him. I was very impressed. I thought, oh, a smart guy. What a real leap of faith for a Canadian company to go down to the United States and sponsor this event. I was impressed. I remember him. I still have the brochures I picked up at that conference and looked at his brochures and talked to him and like, wow, this is really good. I'll keep you in mind, because I didn't have anybody, let alone myself, at that time I met him thinking, well, none of my clients are planning on selling right now. And I had a client with me who, she was the spouse of, her husband was a shareholder of a very successful business. And even with her, it was like, yeah, they're business owners, but they're not selling, blah, blah, blah. And sort of walked away and filed the brochures away. And what I really missed, Lorne, was that, I'm a planner in my heart. Like if you were to ask my husband or my kids, I'm always planning. It's part of who I am, right? But the key thing that I kind of missed was that lack of planning. That, I had a plan for my succession plan, 1, 2, 3. I had 3 different people lined up. All of them fell through, strangely enough. God really slammed that door closed. And I know that we have to plan for these things ahead of time. I'm a specialist, very much so in my profession especially, and I know the value of specialists. We've all listened to Mitch Anthony how many times, and he tells us we're worth 350 basis points because we're specialists. We know the value of specialists. And I also know about competition and collaboration and how that ends up, as such a wonderful thing for people. But I really didn't see getting Stillwater in a discussion at that time, and never really saw it applying to myself or even some of my business clients.
So part of your own planning didn't necessarily involve you selling your business. You weren't thinking that way at the time, not completely.
Not at all, Lorne. I had a bookcase in my office that was, my clients would ask me all the time, because in 2019 was the year I turned Freedom 55, and many people would ask me, when do you plan on retiring? And I would say, you see this bookcase of those are all my heroes. And one thing you're going to notice about them is they all have white hair and they're still working. And I plan on doing the same thing. And my grandmother was 91 and she hardly had any white hair. And I'm hoping to be the same way. So I'm not planning on retiring in the foreseeable future. I do want to build a bigger team and have some time off. But as long as I have time off, I have no intentions of retiring. But I did have a plan for disability, death. I had a contingency plan. I had people lined up to take over my practice from within. Sadly, the 3 people I had, a 3 contingencies, and they all failed. And that proverb, I think it's 18, I don't remember what it is, Lorne, help me out, 18:5 or something, that we plan, God laughs. And it was really very interesting. So I had no intentions of retiring, took an unsolicited offer. As a result, I got less for my book than its potential. And, was this really good stewardship? Here I am, I had enough. I'd gotten to my financial finish line. But imagine, Lorne, what good I could have done for that orphanage in the Philippines with more, or for Opportunity International, for World Vision, for Compassion, for fighting human trafficking. imagine. And do I have regrets? 100%. And, it's not something that I planned on selling my practice and selling it for less than I could have, for sure.
Yeah. Many are the plans in a man's heart or in a person's heart, but the Lord's purpose prevails. To me, it's just a powerful, impactful verse for all of us in our lives. So I'd like for you to explore a little deeper some of the mistakes you made in the whole succession plan, how things happened for you. If you had to redo it over again, and even going back to the Stillwater conversation, I'm quite interested in why you didn't have a continuing conversation with Stillwater when the whole selling of your practice came right to the forefront for you. So kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Yeah, well, thanks for asking, Lorne. And I just want to say that, learning, Ron Blue says you can never take somebody where you haven't gone yourself. And, I'm that person in my personal life too. Like, I've never paid for cable in my entire life, because as a financial advisor, I always wanted to honestly say to any client, drop the $250 a month cable bill and put that to paying off your credit cards, putting money aside for your kids' RESP. So I'm very much that person where I practice what I preach, or I try really hard to, right? So my mistakes, I really believe that, like in The Purpose-Driven Life, Rick Warren, when he talks about our shape, or what our purpose is, the most impactful one are our negative experiences, and how God can recycle that pain to make us so much more impactful. And so for me, one of the issues, or I call it the three critical takeaways, is that we got to plan for the unexpected. Isn't it funny? Like, I'm a planner. I plan everything about my life. I had my succession plan, and God closed the door on 3 in 1 month. Figure, you guys can do the math on that one, okay? And then I am a professional. I have a lawyer, I have an accountant, I have a bookkeeper, because I don't like bookkeeping. And I use professionals all the time in my practice. Why didn't I use an M&A professional? Was it because I had enough M&A practice in my professional life that I thought I would do an okay job? And accountants tend to be like that, just to be very frank. KPMG, most big accounting firms have an M&A practice, because, if you're an accountant, you can do M&A too, right? And so was it that lack of humility that I didn't reach out to them? I honestly didn't even think about Stillwater until a year after this crisis. Even though I had just met them, I didn't even think about them after it. And I thought a little bit about, I wonder if I'm getting the right price for my book going with Manulife, or selling it, to Manulife on an unsolicited offer, versus if I walked across the street with, and talked to RBC Dominion Security or BMO Nesbitt Burns. And the reality is, hesitant. I couldn't, when you're in a crisis, you got to get through it. And it was I remember just working such long hours, my husband coming to the office at midnight saying, you got to come home and get to bed. This is crazy. You can't live like this. And it was just pushing me fast in the direction of the most expedient, which is accept an unsolicited offer. And the one thing that I learned, and it just so happened that Doug had emailed me almost a year later, more than a year later, actually. It was after the pandemic. So it was in the end of May that I got an email at my Manulife email right before I was closing the account down, saying, sending an email. And I said, oh, can you update my email address to my CA practice? Because I'm leaving Manulife at the end of this month. My email at Manulife won't work anymore. And he responded to my personal email right away and went, you're leaving Manulife, can we talk? I've been praying, and I have something important I need to share with you. And so again, like very much a God timing. If it would have been, that was the first email I got from Stillwater, and I'd met them a year and a month before. And it was a week or two before my email would have bounced. He would have had a hard time knowing where I was, to be frank. And, you know, and we talked, and he said, you know, our track record, and this is a slide I created when I joined Stillwater, is not the slide I created, but the concept is so important to me, is that 100, like I'm a track records person, I'm a numbers person, 100% of their clients get more than they would have gotten on a single unsolicited offer, on average 54% more. And again, God has a sense of humor, because right after that conference, the last in-person one in February 2020, I was with another guest, another client, a woman who had also sold their business, and her former partner texted her as we were sitting on the plane leaving for Orlando, saying, stop in and see me, I'm going to be in Florida too. And it was right on the way to where we were going after the conference, which was my sister's place in Cape Coral. And when I got there, even though I'd never met this man before, he knew all about me. He knew how much I'd gotten paid for my practice. And he knew that they knew that they underpaid for my practice. And it was so humbling to realize here I was thinking I was pretty astute at this, and I was, you know, taken advantage of because I was in a crisis. And you know, and also when you're in the middle of a crisis, does anyone want it to last forever? And the reality is, it's so important to execute quickly. You know, it's just like in a market crash, you got to execute quickly if you're going to, you know, buy when the prices are low, because nobody knows how long this correction is going to last. And we just lived through one that lasted a lot shorter than anybody could have ever imagined ahead of time. And my next door neighbor here is a managing partner for KPMG. And I asked him, I said, what do you think is the average period to close when we do a mergers and acquisition? And he guessed 24 months. And I said 6.5 months. And I know, because I remember well those days between April and the end of August, those incredible pressure, you know, short staff, and knowing that, okay, I'm thinking about selling something I've never thought of doing before. You can't wait for that period of time to be done, and you need certainty that it's going to happen. So it was really a disruptive, impactful, and meaningful call with me, that call I had with Doug, because I knew personally, like Ron Ballou said, I know personally why it's so important to take people where because I've been there. I made all the mistakes.
Yeah. The interesting thing, Ruby, in what you share is I think you're in many respects now uniquely positioned to help an advisor sell their practice, as you know, for one thing. You're equipped in a special way because you've been through it. So one of the questions, and we're going to get to some questions, so I want to open it up. If you have a question, please put it in the chat box. But the one thing I wanted to mention before we get to questions is the whole idea of stewardship, because on the slide that you just had there, it mentioned about 54% more. The idea of that unsolicited offer. And if you don't have an unsolicited offer, in essence, it means you're getting 54% less for your business, which means you have less money to steward. So that means really that by getting more for the business that the Lord has allowed us to grow, we end up having more to steward. And you mentioned that in your comment about, you know, if you had gotten more for your business, you would have been able to be, I can't imagine you being any more generous, Ruby, to be honest, but because you are a generous person already, but you would have had more to be generous with. Is my point. So I guess that's a significant point when you're dealing with business owners, is the whole idea is, as a professional, you can help them be a better steward and have more to be a steward over.
Yeah. And you know what, Lorne, it still makes me actually quite emotional, and it's not about me at all. It's because stewardship is so important to me, and why is stewardship so important? And first of all, because Jesus said it is, and that what we have is a gift given by God. We're managers of our time, talent, treasures, and influence. And our time is really our most valuable asset, right? We know nobody knows how long we're going to be on planet Earth. COVID taught us all of that. Even healthy people are dying from COVID. Our talent, what we're good at, our treasures, our money. We went through a year where the stock market fell 34% and then raced back again. And our influence, like, how can we influence? I had a wonderful chat last night with a gentleman, and he wants to go beyond giving money. And I said, give your influence, because be an influence to other people in your lives. And you know, I'm reminded of Warren Buffett writing that letter to my 10-year-old son in the middle of a financial crash. That's bizarre that somebody so powerful would do something for somebody who would never repay them ever. And yet we're stewards, and we're going to give an account of that stewardship one day. So for our own businesses, really what I did is I gave a gift to a large publicly traded company that didn't earn it. And my family could have been blessed more. Not that they've got what they need, but you know, my children, my husband have sacrificed being away from me a lot, because as a top financial advisor, you work hard. Like, you know, it's not, I didn't win a lottery or anything. There's a lot of hard work that goes into being successful too. I didn't want to diminish that part. And also the passions, like, I'm from a big family. I have a passion, and I'm a businesswoman. So I have a passion for Opportunity International, because they help poor women in developing countries start their own business to get themselves and their families out of poverty. And I have a passion for orphans. And so that orphanage in the Philippines, with that extra money, they could have expanded with the additional funds. We could have serviced thousands of more loan clients with Opportunity International. I could have helped a former Advisors with Purpose member who's fighting human trafficking in Indonesia. Like, Lynn would have really been blessed if I could have given her more money. And so those things are very critical. And even the fact, what's also very painful as a steward is that my influence. And so, knowing that the people that are working with my clients right now don't share my biblical worldview and don't share those biblical financial principles with me is very hurtful or hard on my stewardship of my influence. And, you know, that there was disruption to my clients, that both my own expectations and my clients' expectations weren't managed very well in that experience, and that they didn't end up with a financial advisor who shared the same values as I did and that my clients were used to. And which is why I'm very passionate to say, don't hesitate to plan. I never planned on retiring, and I had a contingency plan, a threefold one, but it's really never too late to plan, even if you don't think you're going to sell. Like, I never thought I was going to sell. You could face death, disability, a divorce, a disagreement, a disruption. And Proverbs 21:5 tells us that when you make hasty decisions, whether you feel like I didn't have any choice making this hasty decision, but it does lead to a financial loss. And think about it not only in your own practices, think about it for your clients also. If you care about your business owner clients, I could be them. And they could tell you, I've got a plan. Talk to them about it. And imagine how much your business clients would appreciate your stewardship of your influence on them, because their business is likely their biggest asset. And what could they do with 54% more? That would be amazing. What would they do if you made them have no regrets in selling? what would they feel about you, or their loyalty to you, and their your referability from those business clients if you were their big mistake insurance in selling without a plan too early. And, you know, I was a licensed financial advisor for 25 years, insurance licensed, and to do really cool things with tax planning and strategic giving for business owners, you need a 5 or 10 year time frame for things like whole life insurance and permanent life insurance to really benefit those business owners. So it's so critical to plan and to use professionals and to use competition and collaboration in these very important decisions.
So one of the things, we got about 15 minutes left in our presentation this afternoon, and I want to dedicate that time to questions. We do have some questions coming in on the call, and thank you, Ruby, for all of the information that you shared. And one of the things that I want to say is what we want to provide as an organization, Kingdom Advisors, is the opportunity to, you know, if somebody is wanting to sell their book of business, that they get a like-minded advisor, because, you know, someone similar to you in your passion, your faith, and so on. And one of the saddest calls that I had was first when I started in this role in 2015, and it was an advisor in Western Canada, and he was in his 80s, early 80s, and he said, "I wish you had come along sooner because I wanted to pass my book of business on to another Christian." And he said, "I couldn't find one." So that is one of the things, and we are still in the early stages, Kingdom Advisors here in Canada, but that's one of the things that we want to develop. And one comment on the line is, you know, the pool of advisors to choose from. And one suggestion is your study group is a good place. And Ruby, you are part of a study group, but many of these groups meet regionally. So that's a great opportunity to connect with another advisor. But also, if you're interested in selling your book of business or bringing on a younger advisor to mentor, it's good to post that, because there are job opportunities that you can post on the KA website. It's underutilized in Canada. It's being used in the US. So that's an important point. But one of the questions that come in, Ruby, would be around cost for, you know, an advisor to put his business out there. So like, what would the cost be to the advisor to determine to get a buyer, you know, using Stillwater as an example?
So I'm going to be very frank that Stillwater, for our full-blown process that we do, what they're amazing at is selling businesses between 15 million and 250 million. And most financial advisors don't have a business that's in that ballpark. Some do, but most do not. That's, you know, a reality. We're sole proprietorships in a way, like small corporations. And then for our limited services, it basically is, I would compare it to real estate, Lorne, in the sense that it's a percentage of what we sell the business for. Just like in managing assets, where managing assets on an ongoing basis is a percentage of what the asset's worth. I think it aligns. I always used to say to my clients, I want to align from an ethical point of view, my best interest and your best interest. So it's your best interest to maximize to hold still or maximize the value of your estate and or your assets. And by me getting paid out on that percentage, then our values are aligned. So with Stillwater, it's very much the same thing. It's a percentage of a success rate. And for smaller practices, for smaller businesses less than 15 million, that would be about 6% on a success rate. And then there's a work fee too that we, you know, it's biblical to pay people for the work that they do. And so if we're just like you get paid for doing a financial plan, most advisors would charge for a very in-depth financial plan if there's no, you know, ongoing assets under admin, as an example. So there is an upfront cost also. And it really depends, because we don't do the whole full-blown process for businesses under 15 million. So it would, you'd have to almost reach out and talk to me about what to get a quote for what that would be. But it would be similar to like a real estate commission.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. And I think your availability is important, Ruby, for advisors to have this sort of conversation. Just a comment here, and you can add your thoughts to it. Taking less to ensure that my successor is a right fit for my clients is very important to me. More is great, but don't we owe an ongoing duty to our existing clients? So your thoughts on that. Here's a similar comment from Steve. It says, last year I sold my business to a young man and I had mentored for 2 years and continued to mentor. I was looking for certain attributes in my successor: a Christian with strong family values, the aptitude to be generous, the ability to work hard and look after my clients. Money was important to me, but those other things were more important. So can you relate and offer some thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, Lorne, is that, so yes, I 100% agree. And the thing is, and I used to say this to my clients too, value over cost. Warren Buffett says too, people know the price or the cost of everything, but the value is what's really important. Because, Stillwater has a cost, but their value add far exceeds the cost. On average, 54% more. I've seen businesses more than triple what they were happy to accept on an initial offer, and Stillwater was able to get them more than 3 times that amount. And yeah, they paid Stillwater a fee. So there was a cost, but the value far exceeded that. Even if you gave all the excess value away, and it's not about 100%, I don't think anyone on these calls think that it's all about us. We wouldn't be part of advisors. We wouldn't sign that statement of faith if we didn't believe that we have a stewardship responsibility to add value. I don't think you would find a client of mine who said I didn't add value to them. They paid me, but I added more value than what they paid. So it's not all about the cost, the value. It's all about the value. It's all about the stewardship responsibility. It's not about the price or the cost.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because often we can get wrapped up in here's what my book is priced at. This is what I want. Instead of focusing on our clients to recognize the value that we are providing, and like Steve is saying, potentially taking a little less to provide the right value in the next person, in your successor coming along. So I think that's a great point and a great discussion. Does Stillwater have a guide to let clients be aware of the services that you provide?
Yes, we do. And please just email me, Ruby Ly at stcap.ca. Ruby Lougheed, Ruby, RUBYLY at stillwatercapital.ca is the long version. But yeah, we have brochures and guides, and I can send my key points from the booth that we had, and we have client-facing pieces and brochures to explain the value that we add.
That's good, and we can probably send that out, Ruby, when we send the link out for the replay of this video. If you want to provide that to me, we could probably send that out to everybody, so all the KA members would have it. Go ahead.
Just to go a little bit deeper on the question about, well, what if I'm satisfied with the price? Does it really matter that I could have got more? And the answer is stewardship. Because you have a gift that was given by God, and shouldn't we maximize our stewardship of it? And stewardship is both time, talent, treasure, and influence. So you could give more to other charities. You could if you've, got family members that need that, there's so much more you can do by maximizing the value. It has to be a perfect fit, absolutely. When we sell clients' businesses, the acquirers are repeat customers because they're very happy that it was such a good match for them that they want to come to see us again. And that should tell you a lot too, in having those repeat purchasers as customers, right?
Yeah. Ruby, your email is added to the chat, by the way. Your colleague Kate did that for you. So thanks, Kate, for doing that. Ruby's email address is there if you want to reach out. There is a comment from Dwight as well. It's surprising how many investors don't comprehend the difference between value and cost. So I think a point well made. One quick question or comment that I'd like to have your comment on with the D's that you mentioned: death, divorce, disruption. I think there were a couple of more. How do you advise younger companies to get set up and be prepared for those D's?
I would say well, first of all, they need a plan. So younger businesses, younger companies, startup companies need a plan. They have a plan, they have a business plan, or they should when they go into business. I know when I was a startup company in a disruptive recycle business, we had a business plan. And part of that business plan is, what if Ruby, Dale, or Dave should become disabled, should die? Two of them one was married actually at the time. We started, what if, do we want him and his ex-wife as partners? What if there was a divorce? And you have a plan for it, whether or not it's insurance, whether or not oftentimes banks will require some sort of insurance or key man insurance or loan insurance, etc. But it's a financial plan. It's built right into your estate plan. It's built into your tax plan. How are you going to resolve a disagreement? So the 5 Ds are death, disability, divorce, and it could be you or one of your partners if you're in a partnership. And, I hate to say this, but Christians get divorced too. Disagreement or a disruption. And, COVID, ask the people that owned Cirque du Soleil what a disruption can do to a business. Ask Air Canada, ask Celebrity Cruise Lines or Carnival Cruise Lines what a disruption, or a restaurant owner, what a disruption, an unforeseen disruption. Very few people, other than like maybe Bill Gates and a few other people, talked about a pandemic and what that impact would be on the economy before, even though we had gone through one. But we have a generational mindset, and when we forget about tech bubbles, maybe we'll have another one. I don't know. When we forget about real estate bubbles, maybe it's time to have another one. When we forget about pandemics, we had another one. And so disruptions happen, and you need a financial plan. That's why financial advisors are so valuable. Ask Mitch Anthony, and you got to get his replay on KA. And if anyone still has a CD player, I think I still have a couple of his CDs about the value of a good Christian financial advisor or a life planner.
So one last question, because we just have a couple of minutes left, and I know we need to wrap up within the hour for everyone's schedule. But there was a question that came in earlier, advice for a younger advisor. And, even an advisor who's new to the industry and really emerging as an advisor, kind of wanting to specialize in this industry. Any advice? 1 or 2, 3 things that you might pass on as advice for them, even to be unique in this industry, to set themselves apart?
Yeah, I'm going to tell you hands down, it is that you need to specialize. So we all need specialists. It's the way God designed our economy, if you listen to Jerry Boyer. And my deepest conviction is to specialize as a financial planner. Because with technology, artificial information, efficiencies in the market, et cetera, if you specialize in being a portfolio manager, you're at much greater risk, because even if you're right over the long term, people's emotions won't necessarily won't stay with you. because people's time horizons, when I started in this business, I had clients who had stock certificates they had had for 25 years. Nobody holds a stock for 25 years. I think the average is 25 days, if I'm not mistaken right now. Financial planning, Christian financial planning. Why? Because everything's changing, except God doesn't change. And biblical principles don't change. That's why Warren Buffett even, referenced them in his shareholder reports, even though he's not a born-again believer, or doesn't profess to be a born-again believer. If principles become dated, they are not principles. Focus on financial planning, and the best kind of financial planning is biblical financial planning. Get your CKA. Guaranteed, that would be my advice to you. We don't have the big market like the US does to specialize. I had atheists, Muslims, Jewish people of all different faith traditions, Hindus in my practice. None of them said, I really wish you weren't a Christian financial advisor. Never once. Never once did they ever say that.
And I think the reason for that, I can safely say, is because you were guided by these principles that were unchanging. And
Amen.
The biblical financial wisdom that we gain through the Certified Kingdom Advisor training. So for those of you who don't have it, I definitely would urge you to get it. Reach out to me if you want more details, but that will help you specialize in this industry. It will help you be guided by principles. And that's exactly what clients need, is to be guided by principles that do not change. So Warren Buffett giving some great advice. He may not even recognize it's biblical, but it is.
Oh, I think he does.
He probably does. This has been an awesome conversation today. I really appreciate it. I know you've brought significant value to those who have tuned in today. We'll have the replay available. We'll send the links and your information so advisors can connect with you if they so desire. And we'll send out some resources along with this link. Next month, by the way, we're going to have our topic for the study group is on helping widows, which is a powerful thing, because most of the wealth will eventually go to the woman in the marriage. Statistically, that's the way it is. So an opportunity to minister to women, and how do you proactively do that? So I'm going to have a lady on, a newer advisor who actually lost her husband tragically, and she's going to come on and share her story in July. So very much looking forward to that. Lots of thanks, by the way, coming online for your sharing today, Ruby, in the chat, which I know you're not actually seeing. But yeah, lots of thanks for your wisdom that you've passed on today. Thanks very much for being with us, everyone. And thanks so much, Ruby.
God bless everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone. See you later this month.